now. So I paid it no attention. And about a month later, 3-4 weeks later, my friend and I, same two, he's on crutches still, we decided to go to New York City. We decided to just take off, drive to New York City. We didn't tell our parents where we were going. I said I was sleeping in his house. He said he was sleeping in my house for the weekend. So we drove to New York. And in New York, I remember going to the ATM to get some money. And in New York, they have these ATMs where you have to go in the little glass room to get your money at ATM. I don't know if they have that here or if any of you have been to New York. Now, alhamdulillah, you have to put your bank card in to go in there. But in 97, it was not like this. You went in, and it was almost like the game Mousetrap, because you go in, take out your money, criminal comes right in behind you. There's nowhere for you to go. You know, there's nowhere to run. So I went in and I took my money out of the ATM. And I heard the door open behind me, so I turned around. I thought somebody was coming in behind me. And there was a man who put a gun to my face. And he must have really, 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 really needed this money, because he didn't ask me anything. He didn't say a single word. I just remember looking at the gun in my face and him pulling the trigger. And it was a revolver. And to this day, I'll never forget that image in my head of seeing that little spindle turn and hearing that very distinct click of a revolver. And it probably could have been like a .32 snub-nosed gun like this, but when it was in my face, it looked like one of those like cannons that you see on the movies. And I remember when he pulled the trigger, I didn't think anything. You don't think anything. It just blank. You just go into this like shock of blankness. And then a couple seconds later, thankfully I had been doing martial arts. That might have helped me overcome the fight or flight syndrome, because all I could think was, go! Like myself kicking myself, like, what are you doing? Go! So I bum rushed him. We went flying, he went flying, money went flying, gun went flying. And I took off and went to the hotel and didn't say anything to anybody. We went back to South Carolina the next day. And I didn't say anything because we weren't supposed to be in New York. My grandfather would have killed me. If that guy didn't kill me, my grandfather would have took care of it. So I didn't say anything until about a month or two later. I kept having nightmares about this same incident. I kept having night terrors from this incident. And so I told my grandmother about it. And she told me the same thing that the officer had told me. She said, you have to realize that God has a purpose for your life. You're here for a reason. People don't go through the things that you've been through and still walking on this earth without a reason, and you're pushing the limit. This is what she told me. You're pushing the limit, really. God has something for you, and He wants you to get it, but you're pushing it. And she didn't tell me to go back to Christianity and study my Bible. The only thing she told me was that God hasn't gone anywhere. You just have not looked in the right place yet. And so I decided to put myself back together. The car wreck, the gun thing, the getting arrested for fighting, like all of that, like really made me stop really quick and think, that I need to get my stuff together. So I became an agnostic, someone who I believed in God with no form of religion. I prayed to God on the floor on my hands and knees, because this is how all the books of God, this is how the Bible, the Torah, the New Testament, the Bhagavad Gita, all of these scriptures that I ever read, they said that this is how the men of God prayed. And it was during this time that I did read one book about Islam in the public library, because I had never heard of Islam ever. But I remember I was looking in the religious section in the library at school, and there was a book about Islam, and or it was in the library, the public library, and I remember it was some title like "Why I'm Not a Muslim" or some one of these titles that was propagandistic against Islam, but I had no idea. So I just took the book and I read it, and I remember it said that Muslims, M-O-S-L-E-M-S, and any of you knowing Arabic knows that's a very derogatory word. A Muslim is someone who oppresses someone else. That's a very quick sleight of the pen that was used in the past for a very real purpose. It said that Muslims were people who worshipped a moon god named Allah, who lived in a box in the desert in Saudi Arabia, and they were oppressive to women. I remember there was a whole chapter about how they could have 4 wives and as many as they want, actually, because they could marry 2, divorce 1, get 3 more. This whole, and it said that I remember the one thing that really caught my attention was the whole chapter on jihad, where it said that Muslims were allowed to kill non-Muslims at any time, at any place, without discretion, and it was an honorable act, and not only would they go to heaven before it, but they would get 70 virgins on the way. You know, so I closed the book on Islam, put it back on the shelf, and marked off Islam off my little list of religions, and said thanks but no thanks, and if I ever see a Muslim, I am out. And I said I'm pretty safe in Greenville, South Carolina. I had never seen a Muslim ever. So I said, you know, I don't have to worry about running into no Muslims, thank God. So, you know, I started, you know, just worshiping. You know, I tried to just be a good person, you know, pray to God, ask Him for guidance, try to be a genuinely good person. And I remember what changed is when I met a Muslim. I met a Muslim who I had met a couple of times at school. We had went to school together, and I knew him, but I never knew that he was Muslim. And there's a couple of reasons why I never known he was Muslim. Because he was an African American, number one, and the book said that Muslims were Arabs. And number two, I didn't know, you know, I thought Muslims ran around, you know, marrying as many women as they want and killing non-Muslims. I didn't know that they could also be part-time drug dealers. So I didn't know, I never knew that this guy was Muslim. I didn't put two and two together. So we were at his house one day, and me and my other friend, the one that, you know, I got into a lot of trouble with, I'm trying to keep him out of trouble now. We were at his house, and we were debating something about religion. I forget what even the topic was, but you know, you had two teenagers thinking they know everything. And I was trying to explain something to him about the Bible. And that guy came in and was listening. He said, "Have you ever heard of Islam?" I said, "Yes, I've heard all about Islam." He was like, "Okay, so what do you think of it?" I said, "What do you mean what I think of it? That's probably the worst religion I've ever seen on the face of the planet." He's like, "Why?" And he's like, "But I'm a Muslim." I was like, "Man, stop playing." You know, like, you're an African American. You know, he's like, "So?" I'm like, "The book said you guys were Arab. All the Muslims were Arabs." He was like, "What else did you read in the book?" And I told him. He was like, "Man, what in the, you know, what have you been reading?" He's like, "You need to go to the mosque for Jummah." He's like, he told me, he said, "I'm not a good Muslim." This is what he said to me. He said, "I'm not a good Muslim. I'm not even going to try to front and say I'm a good Muslim." He said, "But I can guide you to some people that can tell you the real truth about Islam," because he knew about my story about wanting to find religion. And he said, "You need to go to the mosque for Jummah." And I said, What's Jummah?" He said, "It's just like church with no chairs." And I said, "I can do church with no chairs because in church the chairs were the worst part anyway. Because they had these hard benches that you sit on that are like this, and are so hard." I said, "That's good. You sit on carpet? Wow, man, every church should be like that." And I said, "Where's the mosque?" He said, "It's on Wadehampton Boulevard." I said, "Where on Wadehampton Boulevard?" I lived on Wadehampton Boulevard. I lived right off of Wadehampton Boulevard. He said, "You know where Lee Road intersects with Wadehampton?" I said, Yeah, I lived on the other side of that intersection." He said, "It's right there." I said, "No, it's not. There's nothing. There's a gas station or a church." He said, "Yeah, you know that church, the Evangelical Missionary Training Facility?" I said, "Yeah, I used to take missionary classes there." He said, "You know that building in the parking lot with the gold thing on top?" I said, the gym?" And he was like, "No, that's the mosque." Because I had always thought it was the gym because it was in the same parking lot and it was just rectangular with two glass doors in the front. And you could literally walk in between the church and the masjid and touch them like this. Anyone doesn't believe me, go to Greenville, South Carolina, look at the masjid. You can almost touch both of them just like this. He said, "Yeah, it's right there." I said, "I've never," you know, at first I was shocked. Like, I've been living across the street from all these crazy Muslims all my life. You know, I said, "I never knew." You know, and he told me to go to Jummah, and I asked him what time. He said he would meet me there at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday. So I said, okay. I went on Friday. And I'm waiting outside for him. You know, I'm not going inside. That's not happening. You know, and I'm seeing all these people going in. And at this time, it was a predominantly Indo-Paki Arab masjid. Anyone who went in was not American, period. And I did not see even one African American going there. And I did see one. And then when he went in, I heard him talking in a dialect that I realized he was probably from Africa. So I said, he's not American. So I'm not going, I'm waiting, and I'm standing outside sitting on the church steps, and the imam pulls up and parks right in front of me, who I had no idea he was the imam. But he got out and he asked me, you know, am I waiting for someone, this, that, and the other? And I explained to him. He said, oh yeah, we know this brother. You don't see him that much, but we know who he is. And, you know, he said, I'm glad you came. You know, he was a very, very nice, gentle young man. And he invited me into the mosque, and I kind of wanted to wait on my friend, you know, but I didn't want, you know, at the same time I didn't want to tell this man I don't want to go in. So I went in, and they put me in the back and gave me a chair anyway. And I said, I came to sit on the floor. And they